Welcome to the Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others. Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Studios, Rochester, New York, Mouth Off at RockVox, rockvox.com. Having enjoyed an almost 40-year career facilitating his own authentic brand of the helping conversation, your host, Executive and Recovery Coach, Keith Greer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Helping Conversation. So glad that you are able to join us today. It struck me as I was getting ready to sit and have some conversation with my guest today that other than parents, we could say that the first helping people that we all get to interact with as children are our teachers. Is when we walk in first day of kindergarten, meet that wonderful, compassionate, empathic, loving kindergarten teacher who helps us start our journey through public ed and then maybe higher ed. But I've really been thinking all day in preparation for this episode about the importance of that conversation, of that relationship with a helping person, a person who is going to help us learn and help us grow and help us develop, help us in some of our first relationships with peers and with other significant adults in our lives, our relationship with learning and how that follows us through our lives, our relationship with our own vision for ourselves, as we know the importance of some of those first conversations and relationships with kids that age in how that helps them develop a sense of self. So I have a couple of episodes. Actually, this is the first of 3 episodes coming up this season that will focus on some aspect of this huge system that we interact with called education and the folks in that system that help us. And so I want to immediately get running here and introduce to you my guest for today, Aneesha Jacko. Good afternoon, Aneesha.
Good afternoon, Coach.
So good to have you here. Let me take a minute and introduce all of our listeners to who Aneesha is and to give you an idea of where our conversation today is going to go, because it's going to go in some wonderful, wonderful directions. So Aneesha Jacko leverages over 21 years of experience as an educational leader, coach, teacher, counselor, and licensed minister toward her compassionate, creative, and influential work with leaders, teachers, students, individuals, families, and organizations. She is passionate about and a strong advocate of celebrating people and the work that we do together. Ms. Jacko earned her bachelor's in psychology degree with a minor in early childhood education. She went on to obtain 3 master's degrees in early childhood, special education, literacy, and school building and district leadership. Her instructional training is in counseling, early childhood, literacy, and assessment. And over her career, Ms. Jacko has served as a counselor, teacher, early childhood director, assistant principal, and a senior educational evaluation specialist. As a senior leader in a large urban district, and this is one of the topics we're going to jump into today, because Aneesha just jumped into this role literally 15 days ago. Her approach is both strength-based and inquiry-oriented, partnering with teams as they create awareness, generate action, and facilitate learning and growth. As a result of challenging the teams she worked with to develop and sustain new perspectives, attitudes, skills, and behaviors, they experienced not only improved performance, but an enhanced sense of connection between their professional and personal lives. Off school grounds, she is a wife and a mom of 2 wonderful boys, Sai and Avi. Sai is in 4th grade and Avi is in the 2nd grade. And when Aneesha is not doing her wonderful work with students and colleagues, she coaches her boys' basketball games and enjoys being on the sidelines of their soccer, baseball, and track events. Oh my, do you sound busy? And thank you so much for carving out the time to be with me today, Aneesha.
Thank you so much. I think I love the opportunity to meet with a coach.
All right. Well, good. And we've been having a lot of fun in our conversation, and our relationship just started a few months ago in meeting and coming together and having a variety of conversations about that cross-section between being very coach-like and the work that you do very specifically within the world of education. So I always like getting this conversation with my guests started by asking you to just give a real quick synopsis of how you got to where you are in your professional endeavors right now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you first for this invitation. And it's really surreal because I'm literally in my 17th day now.
Okay.
And I'm literally 5 minutes away from my high school where I graduated from.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I say that because I left high school over 25 years ago on a path of becoming a doctor.
Oh.
So I went to college with the intent of becoming a school psychologist. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
After finishing college, I then attended school to become a school psychologist. And where the story gets really exciting is that my first position as a counselor in the Department of Education afforded me the opportunity to be a counselor, to be a group. I used to take groups and talk with students. But then, you know what, Keith, something similar to what happened now. 9/11 happened. And I think what we all did as New Yorkers, we had to take inventory around, what am I doing with my life? Am I meant to be doing what I'm doing? Am I happy? Is this the role that I want to do? And at that time, interestingly enough, I was working in Rockaway, and I went to school in Rockaway in Bell Harbor. And that's when I met my favorite teacher. And you know what? She taught kindergarten, Miss Rosen.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you know what? I just want to teach kindergarten 1 year, just like Miss Rosen. And honestly, almost 21 years later, I'm in the school building, and I always dreamt of being a kindergarten teacher. So that passion of becoming a teacher and working with students turned into this quest of internal, like, what is it that I want? How do I move students? How do I make these connections to people? And now as a principal of a school, I have my own kindergarten students. I have pre-K all the way up to 5th grade, literally right where I started almost 25 years ago in this quest to make an impact as a doctor, right? And now, similar to that of being a doctor, like, I am saving lives, right?
Yes.
I am making those strategic connections, like in those neurons.
Right.
And it's been, it's really just in you saying that, really it's come full circle.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful story. And especially the proximity to where you were in school and hanging out with Mrs. Rosen. Right? That is just wonderful. Just wonderful. So I get curious with my guests, not only about a little bit of their journey, but if we knew you when you were a kid, what was going on then? What were you involved in? What was in your head and heart then that was evidence, let's say, that you were destined to fulfill some type of helping role?
Well, I mean, Keith, I was out in the times of Cabbage Patch and Barbie dolls. So I had this special, bench where I would put all my dolls and I would teach my class. So that was one. I used to always get in trouble for talking.
Oh, so God, that's why you and I get along so well. That was me too.
And I think back to Miss Tillman, Miss Yeager, Miss Hatchberg, all of those teachers who always silenced me and told me, Aneesha, you need to be quiet. And all I do is talk for a living.
Right.
It's really hilarious.
Yes, it is.
And I think the last thing, which is actually the most exciting, my last name is Jacko. Who didn't grow up in the 80s going to the supermarket and seeing the name Jacko all over the magazine row? So I love to perform. I love to sing and dance like Michael Jackson.
Uh-huh.
I knew I was destined to, I wanted to always like put on a show.
Right.
And so now I can help create those opportunities for our students just to be on.
That's awesome. A really quick story, because this just popped into my head as you were saying that about, you were the kid who was always being told, please pipe down. Because I don't believe it's a coincidence for most of us that we pursue the careers we pursue.
Right.
So I tell this story. It's a little dramatic, but not much of an exaggeration, that from kindergarten through 12th grade, 4 report cards a year, right? On every report card for those 13 years, there was a comment on it that said, Keith socializes too much. And I know that as far as the system was concerned, that was not on there because they were celebrating my wonderful interactional skills. They were saying, will you please sit down and quiet down? But like you, I've always had this fascination with people and relationship, and it's kind of my wheelhouse, and that was there from the time I was a little kid.
I love that word, wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm writing that down.
Okay, go for it. You can. It's all yours. I'd love to tell you I made it up, but I didn't. So I've heard a few names that would be maybe answers to my next question about along the way. As a helping person, as a leader, as a teacher, as an educator, who have been some of your mentors?
Wow. I think for me, when we can't deny trauma. At a young age, I was raised by my aunt. And so my aunt had a significant impact on me because at the time she was raising me, she was a chemistry teacher in a high school and a guidance counselor.
Right.
And she's also a reverend, right? So when you think about the happenstance of some of the things that come into your life young,
right,
and those experiences you have, you don't even realize how it shapes you to be this compassionate and curious person.
Right.
Right? So I think even down to never even having a teacher that looked like me until I went to college, right? So thinking about the race impact of being this really bright and talkative Black girl in a school that I was the only girl of color in my class.
Right.
Right? So now you think of the implications of that even now on our society. Like, wow, there were so many other things besides being raised by my aunt, being of a certain ethnicity, and then on top of that, being in a gifted and talented class, right? There's so many levels. So I think significant places that helped me, I would say family,
right.
I would say church played a significant role, and having really good friends and family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then you think back and you fast forward, and those are still some of the same support systems that I have now. And it's fascinating.
Right. Right. Lifelong.
Right.
I'm struck just because, and I by far am no expert on some of this research, but I know there's some out there that talks about how underrepresented in gifted and talented classes are children of color.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Yeah.
And
right.
the racial battle fatigue that you don't even realize from that early perspective, and even now in my role, is quite fascinating.
Right. Right. It's nice to think about the fact that the school that you head up has a pair of eyes in charge that are looking. Right?
Wow,
looking maybe
right.
a little bit closer than maybe in your generation of who was looking to identify you specifically as a student of color and also a gifted and talented child.
Yeah. And to be a seer and a hearer. And so it's no accident that I was a music major, right? And then I went to Mark Twain and I had a music talent. So
right.
I could hear and play notes by tune. You could play it and I can play it.
Right.
Like you could sing and I knew the notes.
Yeah.
Right? And so we find that those little someone saying you're good at something helps you to open a door and not stay stuck in that place of not being seen, but you're going to hear me because I'm good at this, right? And it's no denying me. And so that gets you into the door.
Right. You know, that sounds so simple.
Right.
And yet so powerful. And I think of, my 30 years in public ed, of the impact of saying to a student, you are really good at that. Right? To maybe be a voice that offsets some of the, maybe some of the negative voices in their head. Not a complex thing to say, but so impactful.
So impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump into that a little bit about, early in your career as a teacher, what you did, what you thought about around engaging students. How did you make that happen? What was, maybe first and foremost on your mind on that first day of class? Because the cornerstone of a good helping relationship, we know, is trust. Do I trust this person? And so how did that play out as you were creating relationships with students?
That's an interesting question because I started in early childhood, and really the trust began with, and understanding kindergarten, it began with parents first. I had to establish a relationship with my parents first, so they could feel comfortable around who they see, who's going to be with their child, probably more than they are.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
We're with our kids in school sometimes longer than parents are at home.
Right.
So I think my first inclination, which probably led to being a really gifted teacher, is that I really saw an equal opportunity to develop my parents. Yeah. As it was to make those connections with the student.
Right. Right.
Because that was like fun. Like I loved getting ready for my classroom. Right. But then, interesting enough, it does change as you get older. Right. Because I used to teach SAT classes on Saturday mornings with high school seniors who were over school. But I had to engage them. And some ways that I did that, I would connect what they like. I would bring music in. I would, play some of their favorite artists. Right. I would do an inventory of what they liked. Yeah. And so I connected what they liked and what they were interested into with some of the sight words that they would see in the SAT and make those connections for them.
So I have a note here from when you and I spoke the other day in preparation for this about the importance of just establishing with kids that you're just a likable person. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. That's a good,
Yeah. Right.
Right.
What I love what you're saying about, and I have a follow-up question I don't want to lose because I'm really curious about your take on this, about what you're saying about creating those relationships with parents. Yeah. When I train coaches or clinicians who are interested in working with families, and inherent in that is working with either kids or teens, it's always really interesting to me because a lot of times people walk into the room and they're very oriented around wanting to work with kids and teens, but they carry with them a bit of perspective that when they engage with that family, they really need to invest their energy in establishing this trusting relationship with the kids. And I'm always the one who says, no. You just kind of said it. That's kind of the easy part. Right. In either coaching or in family therapy, your primary responsibility is to create that safe and trusting relationship with parents, because you could also make the argument for a family that maybe is in a therapeutic process, change is going to emanate from the power structure in the family, which is mom and dad. So that relationship is paramount, and not that you ignore the kid, but you do your work with the parents. I'll even argue that I think that's what kids inherently want. They know I'm not the parent in my house.
Right.
And so here's my question. I'm curious because I have my own thought on this. So you're talking about your role with younger kids and this perspective that my first priority as a helping person is to create that safe and trusting relationship with a mom and or dad or other caregivers. Do you think that that is true even as the kid gets older? So it's one thing to talk about it like with little kids in elementary, but would you say to someone who's a middle school teacher or a high school teacher that you would argue that that still holds true?
I think developmentally, when you think of Erikson and Freud,
Right.
I would say it does evolve to the community. And that's why I think from a sociological perspective, that's why the friends that you keep are so critical.
Right.
And it has to be a community.
Right. So it's more than just the parents.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
But you first build your relationship with your parents. That's your first cohort.
Right. Because it's one of the things I was for all the years I worked in a high school, and Lord knows I worked with the most wonderful people and the most wonderful educators. But it always struck me, and I always realized as a school social worker came at it from a different perspective. The difficulty that some of the teachers had in engaging with parents and even wanting to engage with parents is sometimes saying, look, this kid's now 16, 17. They need to figure it out on their own. And I used to be the voice, as respectfully as I could, that would say, not necessarily. Like I could make a case that 15 and 16-year-olds need their significant caregivers in their life even more.
Yeah.
Given some of the craziness in the world.
I'm glad you said that because my sons play soccer and we went to a tournament and my son is 7. So the kids are in second, third grade?
Right.
The sidelines are packed with families. You're tripping over a family. We stayed for the last game with the high school and there was one parent on the sideline. And I was just so my husband is loud, so he shouts all the time for our kids. I'm like, oh my God, Danny. But then he was doing it for the older ones, and I was like, where are the parents?
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. Thank you for shifting my mindset because it is equally important.
It's really, and yet I know that as kids get older, they become much more sophisticated in trying to convince their parents and caregivers that they don't need to be there.
Right, but they need.
But they do. And I would even go one step further from, a lot of years of working with that age group. When they say, I don't want you there, don't believe them. I don't believe they believe that. There's cultural pieces to that narrative, societal pieces to that narrative, peer pieces to that narrative. But I've had enough conversations with that age group who, when I've been able to help create and hold that safe and trusting space, and we can talk about kind of where they're at 16, 17, 18, they're able to say, no, I need significant adults in my life. Even while I'm busy telling them I don't, I need them there.
But that's why we need people like you in those spaces to make those connections.
Right. Because
I got in trouble in high school.
Yeah.
Because I was a super senior, meaning I already had all my credits.
Uh-huh.
So I knew that everything else I was taking was strictly extra.
Right.
And my aunt asked me one day, remember, she was a guidance counselor in high school, so she knows his nose. And you forget. But she asked me if I did my homework. I said, why did you ask me? Because that's already a signal that she knows I'm not going to lie.
Right.
I said, why do you ask? Don't you know I get to school the next day in my AP calculus class and the teacher never checks homework.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he checks homework that next day and calls on me.
There you go.
Calls on me.
Right.
I didn't find out 10 years later that she had called the guidance counselor and said, I do not want Aneesha to not pass this class.
Yeah.
I need the teacher to check the homework.
Right.
And I didn't find out 10 years. I was so angry.
Yeah.
Now, what happened, I did graduate the top 10% of my class. I
Yeah.
got a scholarship for college. And I finished college in 3 years because I had so many extra credit courses.
Right.
But I could never understand, like, how all of a sudden I'm getting in trouble. And I was, till this day, I'm still upset about that.
I hear it in your voice.
Yes. So I'm just like, but it took that guidance counselor to have a relationship with my aunt.
Yes. Right.
To then speak to the teacher and say, listen, we want to make sure these kids pass.
Right.
Because, the talk, like those last things can fail you.
Right. Oh, no question. No question.
I was so mad. But it worked out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
but
it did.
It's like 10 years later. So I'm like, yeah, I finished college. Yeah, you finished because I called the guidance counselor. And I was like,
So with little kids, I'm hearing in your role as your helping role with younger kids, engaging parents, creating that safe and trusting relationship with parents, being likable. Mm-hmm. And I know, and I'm curious about this other word because you and I talked about it the other day, is being authentic. So when you are in front of a room full of 5, 6, 7-year-olds, what does authenticity look like for you as a teacher and a helper in that moment?
Well, that comes with the story. I'll never forget. I'm 20, out of college, in front of my kindergarten class. And so I'm reading a story. I get observed from my AP, and one of my students sits in the front of me, and she says, Miss Jacko, you look tired. Were you hanging out last night? And I looked at this little one. I was like, I am tired. I didn't say that. But the AP was cracking up. And that was the last time I ever went out the night before.
Busted by one of your students.
Right. And I think authentic is just showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up.
Yeah.
Not having any extras. This is who I am.
Right.
And I think it just made me a better person.
Yeah.
I am who I am.
Right. And any of us who have spent any time working with young children, middle school, high school, we know that kids and teens have the best bullshit meter on the face of the earth. So if you are not authentic, good luck. They will
tell you.
Yes. Yeah. They'll catch you.
Yeah. So I'll never forget that day.
No, that's great. Right? So honest. Right? Honest.
The gig is up.
Teacher, don't you come in here looking tired anymore because I'm going to call you on it.
And I think I'll never forget, either it was Olivia or Winter. It was one of my pumpkins that said that. But, she graduated top of her class.
Yeah.
She was a valedictorian her 5th grade year.
That's awesome.
And I went back and I did see her not too long ago.
Yeah.
And she's in medical school.
Ah, how wonderful.
Right?
How wonderful. Yeah, how wonderful. Those are wonderful stories to hear. So let's move on. So we can look at being a helping person within the world of education as a classroom teacher, but you have spent a lot of your time in more of educational leadership, administrator, and now a building principal. And so when you think about how you then bring your helping conversation to that level of the system, because now it's not maybe as direct interaction with students, but it's your faculty and it's your building and it's your staff and it's creating a sense of team or community or whatever word you want. So what are some of let's just say over the last 17 days, what are some of the things that are first and foremost in your head in fulfilling this type of helping role?
That's a big question because there's music behind me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay. Yeah. I think for me, what has helped to sustain the 17 days is being authentic.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation today with my internal team, and I said, Aneesha, you really don't understand how much you have changed our lives. And I was like, I haven't done anything. And she said, you don't understand. When you come in and you smile and you say good morning,
Right.
and we can see in your mask, your eyes squinting, that you're like, honestly, like truly smiling. And you interact with the students and the families and you speak to them. You're showing us that you are authentic.
Right.
And taking the time, literally today, I completed in 2 weeks. I met with every staff member.
Wow. How many is that?
75.
Wow.
So school safety, cafeteria, school nurse,
Right.
custodial team, teachers, paras, school aides, secretaries, everybody. And I'm asking them 3 questions. 1, what do you value?
Mm-hmm.
When you think back to when you were at this grade that you teach, what would you say to yourself? And and the last question is, what do you need from me to be successful this year? So you hear that authentic, like just being vulnerable.
Right.
And saying, listen, I'm going to make mistakes, but I need to know what you value,
right,
how you see yourself, and then what do you want from me? How do you want me to show up for you this year?
Wow. That is the antithesis of walking in as a leader and telling everybody what to do. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So moving away from some of the more traditional notions about leadership, like convince, coerce, and control, to being coach-like.
Yeah.
Tell me, tell me, treating your staff as people who are full resources in their life. Tell me what you bring, what you need. I'm going to trust your feedback. This is not something I need to come in and tell people what to do. That's really powerful.
They're blown away.
That's awesome.
And I'm kind of like very humble because I'm just doing what's fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
who in a pandemic is getting a promotion and just, I feel like I'm floating.
Right. I think I've said this on here before, but it always strikes me because you use the V word, the vulnerable word, that for you as a leader to walk in and to make yourself vulnerable, to put front and center. I don't have all the answers. I don't need to have all the answers. And by the way, you have many of the answers, and we're going to work on this together. You and I have talked in the past about the whole conversational intelligence modality. And one of the things we know from the world of CIQ is that when a leader demonstrates vulnerability in front of, in this case, your staff, that it actually helps to produce that wonderful neurotransmitter oxytocin in their brain, right? So just the act of vulnerability on your part goes a long way for them of seeing you as authentic and trusting and safe, right? And strength-based, all those kind of cornerstones that we would want anyone in a helping role to emulate. So that's powerful. And I spend enough time in a variety of different industries to know that's still not the norm, Aneesha, for leaders to come in and be willing to make themselves vulnerable.
Wow, that's a big statement you're saying.
We're getting there, but it's still, I do not see it as the norm. Most people who get elevated into positions of leadership still somehow operate from this convince, coerce, control, tell, sell, yell, however you want to call it, versus a true place of vulnerability, co-creation. You tell me, right? Share with me your brilliance. This isn't just about me coming in and trying to show how brilliant I am. I can see how your staff would respond wonderfully to that. Never mind, just as you just said, we're in the middle of this pandemic, which is a whole nother level of craziness. Correct.
And that the fact that they are enjoying coming to work,
right,
is really outside of phenomenal. And that's why I connected that to, I remember working in a building during 9/11. It's two significant, these are two significant life experiences that I've lived inside of a school.
Right.
I think that's another story.
Oh my. Right. So I'm curious about that part because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is you walk in as the principal of this school and you all are totally remote right now, correct?
Correct. No, we actually have students coming in.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have students that are remote.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So just from the standpoint of somebody who has spent her entire career in education, kind of leadership to the side, what is this like for you and your staff right now to be in the middle of this in a system that I might argue was not, like many other systems, wasn't created to function wonderfully in a worldwide pandemic, but now has to?
When I have conversation, right? When you connect with people and
Right.
you find out the why, this is their happy place.
Right.
They have secured that this is where they are doing their best work.
Right.
And if that's my happy place, I can't sit at home
Yeah.
because that's unknown.
Right.
But I know I can teach someone how to read and write.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do that. And yes, I can get an exclusion. I can apply to be excluded, but I don't want to. I want to rescind that. Because I'd rather show up. So some teachers can apply to work from home.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
For a medical distinction.
Sure.
And those that know they can, they still won't because they'd rather be here.
Yeah.
And that's quite phenomenal.
Yeah. In my 30 years in public ed, I spent 2 years in an elementary school. And while I'm the first to say that in terms of my preference of age to work with, elementary school is not my preference. I love the high school kids, but I always said this. Every day for 2 years, when I walked into that elementary school, it was like walking into the womb. Nurturing and loving and warm. And it was the best place as a human being to come to work.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. And it sounds like your environment is very much the same.
Well, it's working there. I mean, it's a staff that, there's been they've gone through a lot of other leadership styles.
Right. Yeah.
So the trauma of that and trying to, that post-traumatic stress
Right.
of what it was to what it can be is difficult.
Yeah.
So that's actually what I'm going through right now.
Right.
Right. And then I think it's life, right? Like, what do you do when you've been in relationships that haven't been trusting?
Yeah.
How do I move on? How do I keep going?
So I'm curious about that. So in your role as a helping person right now, walking into an environment where you're kind of the new person on the block, you're walking into a system that, as you just said, has experienced different styles of leadership, some of it maybe not so wonderful. I'm curious if you have run into among any of your staff and faculty a sense on the part of some of them of being very slow to trust you. Like, all right, Ms. Jacko, not quite sure who you are. Mm-hmm. We've had some, let's say, some funkiness in the leadership world. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna, withhold judgment about you for a little bit and see where this goes.
Yeah, that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to smile.
Yep.
Call it out.
Okay.
And just show up.
Right. Right. Right.
Just like, hey, I recognize this is happening, but I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to work with you.
Yeah.
When you're ready, I'm here.
Yeah. Beautiful. Right. Right. Right.
So that's all you could do.
Right. So you can both honor and normalize and validate
Absolutely.
that some of your folks maybe are a little bit less likely to quickly trust and yet still engage, as us helping people do, in all those things that we do to engender trust. Just
Yep.
knowing that it's going to come at different rates and in different ways depending upon the person we're engaging with.
And to be seen and heard, right?
Yes.
So to a teacher that was very heavy, I said, I see value in everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to connect with you
Yeah.
to get it going.
Right.
And then when you say that, the next day they're in your office saying, let's go.
Let's go. Right.
Right? Because there's nothing to hold on to
That's
now.
right.
You
That's
got to let that go.
Right. So again, you make sure that people feel heard and that people feel valued and they are seen as a resource. And I want to know. And if you're not quite trusting of me right now, I'm not going to take that personally. In fact, that makes sense to me. So, but I'm going to continue to interact with you in ways that communicate. I want that trust and I want to create that safety and that sense of inclusion. And that's really powerful because, again, I think there's a lot of examples out there of leaders who respond to an initial message of I don't trust you by pushing back. Well, you have to. Right? And we all know where that goes.
Nowhere.
That goes nowhere. Exactly. Right? So I'm also curious, just because you talked about this in your role as a teacher, of the importance of engaging parents and caregivers. Similar level of importance now as a building principal to put a lot of time and energy into that relationship?
Absolutely. And so, one of the things as a shift from a teacher to a school leader is that you are the leader who engages all stakeholders.
Right.
And you can put systems and structures in place. And so one of the things that I put in place is that we have one-on-ones with every parent.
Wow.
Connect with your parent.
Yeah.
That's an expectation.
Yeah.
And from there, then we can talk about next steps.
Right.
So one of the things we're talking about now, because we have so many families from different backgrounds and speak many different languages, that we should do a name study as an entire school.
What does that mean?
Oh, tell me about your name.
Oh, origin.
Who named you?
Yeah.
Where did your name come from?
Right.
And think of the rich stories and the positive endorphins that come from that conversation.
Right.
Right? So I want the teachers to experience having a conversation about their child from the known.
Right.
I can't tell you about the math and the new curriculum.
Right.
That makes me feel uncomfortable, but I can tell you how I came up with that name and the joy that it brought me when I had them.
Right. That's wonderful. I love that. It's just always such a good conversation with kids to ask them what they understand about the origin of their name.
Yeah.
Right.
But asking the teachers to have that conversation with the parents.
Parents too. Right.
Because going back to when I was a teacher, what I'm learning is as a principal, I have to make those connections with the teachers and connect to them when I was a teacher.
Right.
And that's professional learning.
Right. Being
in their shoes and teaching from that value system.
Yeah. Yeah. So you also mentioned, I know when we talked the other day and a little while ago, that in your work in creating this connection with faculty as a new educational leader in the building, focus on values. So could you talk a little bit more about that, like what you do in that area or what you hope the outcome of that kind of work will be?
Well, one of the things I did share with you, my work with Bright Morning, really talked about you have to tap into the core. Because in order to change behavior, it's really about making those connections in what people believe.
Right.
And so I believe if I value what someone believes in and I make those connections, I can then build on that foundation to give next steps that you won't feel like it's coming from a place of not supporting you.
Okay.
Well, as an example, if I know you value family and the day is over at 3, I'm not going to ask you to come to my office at 3:00 to have a quick conversation.
Right.
Because I know you value your family and that you pick up your daughter And of course, you're going to be leaving, but I know you value that. So I'm not going to put what I need to do in front of what I already know you need to do. So I'm going to call you down at 2:00 to give you time to chat with me so that I know you can go.
Right. Right.
Knowing someone values that is critical.
Right. I would imagine that's got to, on the part of your teachers, your faculty, and your staff, that's got to feel really good to
I don't think they know that.
Right? To know that you value that and you want to hear about that and that you understand that for us, we structure our lives around our value system. It's what tells us that our choices and our decisions are right for us. And we all interact with systems who don't always honor that or aren't even really even interested in, what's your core values.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And it seems so simple, right?
But it does, doesn't it?
But whoever asked you that?
No one ever asked you that.
And you want to hear something really wild?
Yeah.
And it's all about off-school grounds. I had that same conversation with the 4th grade teacher that I did the custodial staff. And one of the team members who's been working in the building for over 30 years said to me, to his boss, to me, I've never had anyone take the time to talk with me like that.
Right.
It makes me so happy to be here.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to work with her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's the custodial team.
That's awesome, right?
Right?
Because that's
that blew me away.
Yeah, because that's not a custodian. That's a human being, right? And your actions say to all of these people in your building, I see you all the same. You're all human beings, right? You all have needs. You all have this value system. And there's no difference here based on, whatever the title is, right, on your door or below your name. That's powerful. And I know sometimes it can be easy to look at that as a helping person and think that's not really hard to do, right? But whether it's hard to do or not, it seems to be in short supply. And it is one of the gifts I think we bring as helping people, regardless of the type of helping conversation we facilitate, is we make time for people. One of the ways we communicate to the folks we work with their value is time.
Yeah.
Right? Uninterrupted, authentic time. And just as that gentleman did, I do think people really respond to that at a moment in our lives when we probably interact with a whole bunch of other people, organizations, and systems that don't give us time.
None.
Right?
And I think we resent situations and people who, I think back to the times when I've been really hurt.
Yeah.
And not seen is when no one gave me the time to even talk to me.
Right.
And to find out.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then that leads to depression and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
Right? And so you circumvent that by, and I think that's interesting, going into being a minister, I've learned to channel that feeling into really acknowledging an anointing.
Yeah.
And that's like a calling.
Right. So I want to make sure, because I'm looking at the clock and we're already over 40 minutes into this. So I want to make sure that we have the time to talk about that part. So you have this other role you fulfill in your life that, from what you were saying when we first started talking, has been a significant theme in your life. It sounds like for most of your life, is your sense of and connection to spirituality and faith. And so in your role as a minister, what do you bring to your helping conversation with folks?
I think I naturally can be in a space and sense what people are going through.
Right.
And I think the hardest thing is seeing something and not knowing when and holding on to it.
Okay.
And, can see what people are going through and hear exactly what's like you can go right to that term.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but having that angst of holding on to it. And I think that's what I'm dealing with now, actually. It's like, how do you hold on? Because they might not be ready, right?
So you mentioned the other day, I love this, I wrote this down, how to know in that role when to listen versus when to say.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, well, you gave that to me. That came from you. Right? So I hear you describing in this role, right? And again, I think one of the superpowers of us helping people is that we are inherently empathic. Mm-hmm. So we hear feeling, we hear messages between the words, right? We are skilled at reading the nonverbals, especially maybe when the nonverbals conflict with the verbals. And so it's one thing to hear it, and it's one thing to hold space for that, but it's a whole nother level of skill and strategy and nuance to then think about, how do I give this feedback back to the person? Or as I think, as you're saying, do I just hold on to it for the time being?
Right, because now I'm the holder and the keeper of this.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And what you came to me for, you might not be able to get, because I don't know if you're even ready to hear it.
Right. Right. So in that role, I mean, I know how I would do it in the role as a coach. So in that role, how do you assess that? That's a big question of assessing readiness to, we always say when I train people about being a coach, that coaches speak the truth, right? But it's not that simple, right?
No,
there's a little bit more to that of how I speak the truth, when I speak the truth. So how do you figure that out?
You have to ask the right question.
Okay.
And you have to get others to be in a place to come to their own realization.
Right.
And I have to be good with being quiet.
Right. And
which is probably why I have a bunch of notebooks around. I
right.
don't even read.
Right.
I don't even read what I write.
Right.
But I just got to get it out.
Right. And so for us people who, from the time we came into kindergarten,
right.
were the people who kept being told to sit down and not make noise, that's really hard to do.
Yeah. Respectful.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. How, even that, I think, how do we trust that people are brilliant about their own lives? Right. And that they can hear some of this feedback. Doesn't take away our need to be thoughtful about how we do it, but that people can hear feedback, people can be challenged, people can have a helping person in their life who speaks the truth to them. But we just do it in a way that I want to think is thoughtful and empathic. Maybe ask permission, right? Can I share this with you? Because once again, most of us have people in our life who don't think twice about giving us feedback, but it's unsolicited.
Right.
And
sometimes you just take the risk. And sometimes I learn, honestly, like I've had a conversation, and so I pray for people.
Yeah.
And in my prayer, I get to get it out. And people say it's healing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God.
Right.
Because it's great to hear the miracles, right? That they go back to the doctor and the brain tumor is gone.
Yeah.
Or, they're walking and they came not walking.
Right.
So you hear those miracles, but it always ties back to you being able to have the self-talk to know that you can heal yourself.
Right. Yeah, right? There really, I guess at the end of the day, isn't a whole lot of choice about that equation.
Right.
Right. Of if my life moves forward, I make it happen. And not that there aren't people in my life who support it and help me and listen to me and all of that, but I make it happen.
You make it happen.
Yeah.
And you have the power to heal yourself.
Yeah. Years ago, when I first entered the field and I was working in the world of substance use disorder treatment, there was this series of movies we used to show people who were in treatment for addiction by a priest by the name of Father Martin. And he was a priest in recovery and made this series of kind of educational videos that I'm sure a lot of treatment programs shared with their clients. But I'll never forget this one statement. he made in one of the videos, and he said, yes, I believe that God can move mountains, but you know what? Bring a shovel. And that has always stuck with me about that coming together of faith. But faith will only take you so far. At the end of the day,
do the work.
Right? We got to work. Right? Yeah.
I like that. I'm writing that down. I'm using that.
Yeah. No, he is always stuck in my head. That little snippet from one of his videos is always stuck in my head because it just not only makes sense. It's just a really cool metaphor about I can have lots of faith and still at the end of the day, I got work to do. Yeah.
I love it.
So really quickly, anything that you would add around how you do a helping conversation in your role as mom?
Oh, I love being a mom. My son got so mad at me yesterday. And I did I raised my voice.
Yeah, okay.
And so what I'm learning to do with my son, he's very introspective and he's so compassionate. And after I see he gets upset, I go back to him. I said, Sai, can you come sit next to me? I'm sorry that I yelled at you. And I'm learning to be a better mom.
Yeah.
And then I say to him, this is why I was upset.
Right.
Because the whole bathroom floor is soaking wet after your shower. And I know you have a soccer game tomorrow, and I want you to be safe.
Yeah.
He smiled. We played some music.
Yeah.
And we were okay.
Yeah.
So I love, teaching him that I can apologize.
You can be vulnerable.
I make mistakes.
Right.
And then every night for both of my boys, we say what we're grateful for.
Right.
And we say our prayers. And I ask them something new. You know what that is? I ask them, do you have any questions for me? Did anything happen today that you want to ask me about?
Right.
So I'm tapping into that sense of inquiry.
Right. Yeah.
and that it's important. I want to know.
Right. What a wonderful message about the normalcy, never mind the importance, just even the normalcy of asking a question. Because I think, again, back to your role as a teacher, how many kids sit in a classroom every day and they have a question in their head, but they won't raise their hand, right? That fear of asking or looking like you don't know. So a wonderful message to your children, not to ask them questions, but to say, ask me questions. That's awesome. I'm writing that one down.
Ask me.
Right. And the other part that you said that, we just keep coming back to here in this role as a helping person is those moments when we allow ourselves. And I see so many parallels between leadership and parenting, where those have been two roles that historically the person in it feels like I can't ever show vulnerability. I can't ever show that I don't know. I can't ever show that I make a mistake. And some of the changing thought out there, both as a leader as well as a parent, that no, man, those are some of our most powerful moments. To say, I don't know. I messed up. I'm sorry. And to believe that when we do that, not only do we not lose authority, let's say, both as a leader and as a parent, but we gain so much of the permission we give for this person, in this case, your son, to have this conversation with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Now, my other son is verbose. He will not stop talking. So
I raised one of those too.
Yeah, he's like nonstop. I'm like, Avi, you have to learn to write it down
because
I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So I'm teaching him to be a writer. But you got to know your kids too. Yeah. And then my husband says, stop asking him so many questions. So I have to figure out how to tap into his other inquiry part.
So in the world, two last questions. In the world of helping, because, we can sit here until the cows come home and talk about all the wonderful aspects of it and being empathic and a good listener and being vulnerable. But helping is energy intensive.
Oh my God.
It's energy.
Draining.
Being a parent is energy intensive. Educational leader, teacher, coach, whoever. So as you engage in this work, what are some things you do or processes you engage in to keep yourself healthy and sharp and energized?
Water. You have to hydrate.
Yeah.
Hydrate.
Okay.
And I love music. And
Okay.
I play music. And I'm learning to write. I have a journal. And I think I want to write a book.
Yeah.
So definitely hydrating and keeping people around me who will force me to check myself.
Honest
say,
relationships.
Like, yeah, how am I doing? What did you see me do? What did I do? What feedback can you give me? So keeping people around me who are honest.
Yeah.
Key.
Beautiful. And the last thing I'll ask you, Aneesha, is if somebody listening today is thinking about becoming a teacher, going into education, becoming an educational leader, what would your words of wisdom be to that person who's considering this road to being a helping person?
Oh. The life that you touch might save yourself.
Yeah. That says it all, right? That says it all. Right. Like you, I have been doing this work long enough to have experienced some of those conversations that come back to you in a moment when you really needed it, and the person didn't know you really needed it, right? The universe just kind of brought them into your life at that moment to say, "Hey, Mr. Greer, you remember when you said that to me?" Which, of course, I don't, right? And here's how meaningful that was, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. That's it, right?
You hit me with that. I wasn't prepared
Yeah,
with that one.
no, that's it. That's it. Like that's the part. Look, I always say in this world of helping, again, you know, being that I have the privilege often of being in the front of the room and helping people explore this as a career, both as a coach or in the clinical world, is there's no way that, at least for me, I have never lost the appreciation for that moment in my role as a helping person where somebody just shared something with me that has never seen the light of day. Like, it can't get any better than that, right? of that moment, right? With another human being who has taken the chance to be that vulnerable with you. Or for a student to say, I don't know, and maybe has never been able to say, I don't know. Or for a student to see themselves through your eyes, right? Where maybe their eyes have been filled with doubt. That, man, it just doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, the aha moment.
Yeah. Beautiful. Aneesha, Jacko, thank you so much. This has been just a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Thanks, Coach.
And I wish you all the best in your next 17 days. and you and we're going to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks for this invitation. Looking forward to another one.
All right. It was great. Thank you so much.
Right. Bye-bye.
I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation with Aneesha today and walked away not only learning maybe a few things about how to be a helping person in the educational world, but inspired, and especially, I think, during this time in our world when right now, I just don't know if we appreciate what our educators are doing in this world of pandemic. It's just so difficult. So I do hope people walk away maybe with even a heightened level of appreciation for the work that people like Aneesha do, and in taking really good care of our children, So I thank you for sitting in with me and my guest Aneesha Jacko today. And I hope that you're able to check out the next episode of the Helping Conversation as we continue to explore and celebrate the practice, art, and science of helping other human beings. Everybody have a great day.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the Helping Conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. For more information on Keith Greer and this podcast, log on to keithgreercoaching.com. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the Helping Conversation.